everyone turns to food in their own way, right? Like some people might be binging, some people might be binging and purging, some people might be binging and over exercising. So, whatever you're looking for to feel that sense of completion and exploiting food and your body in a way to get there, let's talk about it. Okay. I remember when I was deep into my struggle with emotional eating. And the truth was is that I wasn't just turning to food because I was hungry. And I think that that isn't a unique thing to me. I wasn't turning to food because I was hungry. I was turning to food because I wanted to fix something inside of me. I wanted to fix something that I couldn't name. And I think that was the hardest part, right? It was like a sensation. It felt like a monster. It felt like something, it felt like this energy that was living inside me that I just wanted to just make disappear. And it was this need to resolve all the internal chaos I felt. And like I said earlier, what I didn't realize at the time was I was chasing resolution. I was trying to put a bow on every uncomfortable feeling or situation. I just wanted to wrap it up. I just wanted it to go away. And I was hoping that that's what would happen, that once I ate enough, it would go away. Once I did enough, you know, once I did enough of my binging and purging stuff, like I would be tired, it would just go away. But that doesn't really happen, right? Resolution through food, it's a complete lie. It gives you this momentary relief, right? When you're staring into the fridge or the pantry, searching for something to make it feel better, searching for, you think you're going to get to that end of the road where you're like, okay, it's gone. I've handled it. That doesn't happen. The emotions you're trying to bury, they're still there, right underneath the surface. You think you've solved something, but really all all that's happened is those feelings are pushed even farther down, and you're less connected to yourself. You're less connected to yourself, and that's the tricky part. Because in those moments where we're emotionally eating, in those moments where we're turning to our destructive behaviors with eating and food, what we're really craving is a sense of ease, completion, relaxing, right? Something where we're just relief, right? We want to feel like it's okay. We want to feel like it's resolved, like, this feeling of, I feel like the best way to say it is completion, really. Like we've solved whatever that energy is within us. We want to feel like it's solved, it's done. But food can't do that. Behaviors with food, it can't do that. And I feel like that's so important for us to really understand. It might make us feel better for a short term while we're doing our behaviors, while we're binging and purging, while we're doing all this stuff. It might distract us from stuff, but it's a distraction. It's not fixing the root of what we're really feeling. And if you've been there, the pattern of all of this, the cycle of all of this, it only makes things worse over time. And for me, in my personal story, when I was constantly chasing control with food, resolution, completion with food, I never found it. I just ended up feeling more scatterbrained, more out of control, more likely to get triggered and feel like I couldn't handle it. And with the eating, and then what would happen is like the eating would just be like, it would just add, because I'd feel guilty about the eating. I'd feel guilty about the eating behaviors. Then I would notice weight gain. Then I would didn't like how I looked in my body. I didn't like how I felt in my body. I felt completely disconnected from myself. So I didn't feel confident socially, right? It was like it all kind of just layered on each other. And it was a cycle that I didn't know how to break. And the real just the real kicker of it all was that I was trying to control my emotions because I thought they would overwhelm me, when at the end of the day, what overwhelmed me was this behavior with eating and food. Right? It intensified my stress. Maybe it took away the stress for like the, I don't know, so, half hour to 3 hours that I spent in my routine, my binging routine, or whatever it ended up being. But it wasn't long term, and it kept me feeling really, really stuck. And ultimately, enough time would go by that I would turn to food again, right? Like after you have like a binge episode or something, and you feel just so gross and that guilt, you're like, I'm never going to do this again. And then a couple of days later, because you don't have the skills of what to do instead, you do it again, right? So I would do it again. And so it's like I just was in this cycle, and the cycle was keeping me really, really stuck. And I think that if you're listening to this and you're like, "Oh my god, this is very triggering for me." I understand. And I think that what we need to do, and I want to give you something to work on today, is how do we start to deconstruct the belief that resolution equals control, or that completion equals control? That, like, finding some sort of, like, take the air out and flatten the balloon, right? It's like, I just want it to be done, right? Some sort of solve is what equals that sense of peace and quote unquote control that you're looking for. So for me, it began with turning towards emotions and understanding that the emotions I was trying to avoid weren't bad. They were just uncomfortable. So I started to separate what I was feeling inside from myself. So if I was feeling anxious, I started to say, I stopped saying I am anxious, and I started saying I am experiencing anxiety. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. You want to detach your own identity and self from the feelings in your body. Okay, this is what I want you to do after listening to this episode. And then I would love for you to comment and tell me how it went, because this is massive. It seems so small, but I think we go around being like, I'm anxious, I'm anxious. But what if you said, I am having an anxious moment, right? Or I am experiencing anxiety, right? So the anxiety is there, but you are not, right? Like, you are not you are not anxious. Like, you are anxious, but let's try to make a separation. And that separation is a pause. That separation is going to help. Right? It's like same thing with emotional eating, right? It's like, yes, we are emotional eaters. However, to start healing from emotional eating, we need to start to separate our own inherent, like, selves from the act of emotional eating. And that is really, really important, because then you have space. And when you have space, you could start to bring curiosity. And when you have curiosity, you can make change. So trust me, this is not easy at first, because we're so used to reacting immediately when we feel something we don't want to feel. So this is going to take practice, and sometimes you're not going to notice until after the fact, after you've already binged. But that noticing retroactively is actually really important for changing this behavior in the long run. because eventually you're going to notice it before you do it. And then you can make the change. So when that starts to happen, when that familiar urge to reach for food comes up, that's when you pause. That's when you ask yourself, what am I really feeling? What am I trying to resolve with food? And usually, sometimes it's stress, sometimes it's loneliness, sometimes, again, it's that need to just make it go away, to resolve, right? And that's why this episode is about resolution, because resolution is a construct. Resolution is found within yourself when you could be okay with your emotions, when you're okay with feelings, because, and whether they're comfortable or whether they're uncomfortable, because you know that they're going to rise, they're going to abide, and they're going to go.